English is the most widely spoken language worldwide. Studies suggest there are over 1.5 billion English speakers globally. That's billion with a B, more than 18% of the world's population. But how did English become the dominant global language? And why are there so many variations of English? Well, the first question partially answers the second. There are numerous types of English because there are so many English speakers, influenced by diverse cultures and societies. I speak American English because I was born, raised, and educated in the United States. But there are over 160 different types of English globally. As more people learn English, more variations emerge. It's even the language of aviation and maritime communication, known as aviation English and sea speak. In fact, English education is so vital that 138 countries mandate it in their core curriculum. That's 70% of the world's countries, with another 40 offering it as an elective. So at least 91% of countries have some form of formal English education. But why English and not another language? English wasn't always this prevalent. French used to be the preferred language for diplomacy and business among entities that didn't share a common language, known as a lingua franca. The term lingua franca means the language of the Franks, which initially referred to all Western Europeans, not just those in what is now France. It gets its name from the original lingua franca, a pidgin language that developed in the Mediterranean basin by borrowing from several languages and was used for trade and diplomacy from the 11th to 18th centuries. But let's get back to French. After the Norman conquest in the 11th century, William the Conqueror installed French-speaking nobles to rule England, who quickly replaced English with French in all domains of power, from law courts to the church. Although peasants still spoke English, the aristocracy maintained French as their language of choice for several hundred years. By the 14th century, French was the most widely spoken language in Europe. By the 17th century, France was the leading land power in Europe, and French had become the language of prestige, replacing Latin in diplomacy and international relations. So why aren't we all speaking French now? One reason is that we aren't all diplomats, but more importantly, there was a major global power shift in the 20th century with the World Wars. English was already predominant in technology and innovation due to the Industrial Revolution. After World War I, treaties were written in both French and English, which was significant, giving English a foothold in diplomacy. After World War II, France was no longer a dominant power. English, the language of the new major economic powerhouse, the United States, became the language of the economy and money talks. Simply put, English is the most popular language because of economic and political power. American English is particularly influential due to global pop culture, including TV, music, food, and cinema. So that answers our first question, but what about the second? Why are there so many different kinds of English? Firstly, there is no single standard English. Unlike French, which is regulated by the Académie Française on everything from usage to grammar, English lacks an authoritative governing body, resulting in many variations of English spoken around the world, all of which are proper and authentic. Additionally, cultural, social, historical, political, and geographical factors contribute to how we all speak. In the United States, we see English variations based on cultural heritage, like African American English, Chicano English, and Cajun English, or based on region, like Pittsburghese or Appalachian English. In England, you can distinguish between Yorkshire and Lancaster English, even though the counties are just 2.5 hours apart. Many global Englishes are influenced by local languages. For instance, Singapore English or Singlish, based on British English due to colonial history, includes elements such as discourse particles and loanwords from Malay, Hokkien, and Tamil. The same applies to Nigerian English, where British English lacked words to express certain cultural concepts, so they borrowed from native languages. Linguists have tried to categorize the various Englishes using models. The most famous is Braj-Kachru's three-circle model, which labels countries as inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle. The inner circle includes countries where English is the primary language. The outer circle includes countries where English is an official or second language, typically former colonies of inner circle countries. The expanding circle includes countries where English is widely learned as a foreign language. This model suggests a hierarchy, but as we've discussed, no language is inherently superior to another. There are several possible futures for English. Our Englishes might converge due to increased interconnectedness, or they might become so different that they're mutually unintelligible, though that's unlikely. More likely, if English doesn't remain the most widely spoken language, it will be because another economic powerhouse shifts language popularity in a new direction. For now, English remains the foremost world language. In an increasingly globalized world, the exciting part about all these different Englishes is that speaking English allows you to communicate with 1 billion more people than you otherwise could. And if you can speak multiple languages, you're even more ahead. Replacing Latin as the language of diplomacy and international relations. Now, lingua franca, literal franca franca. English wasn't always this popular. Back to French.